Welcome to the 1 year anniversary episode. It is wild to me that it's only been a year. It seems like only yesterday that I recorded the 90-second trailer and the retrospective episode about MCDM. For the occasion, I've commissioned new theme music and new art for the podcast. I'm really pleased with it, and I really hope you'll come to like it too. My guest for this episode is the composer of the new theme music, Patrick Haesler. I learned about him when he published music for the Shifting Library from Where Evil Lives, and now I'm a bit envious of his players who sometimes get custom themes for the dungeons and battles they play. I usually try to keep the episodes to 30 minutes, but for the occasion, I let myself indulge in an extra long episode. So, let's not delay any further and get to the interview. I'm John Denor, and this is Goblin Points. Welcome to Goblin Points, Patrick Haesler.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Tell us a bit about yourself, and also, how did you end up discovering if not the MCDM community, but at least MCDM as a maker of D&D products?
Yeah. Well, firstly, I wear a lot of hats, but chiefly, I'm a composer. I write, record, and produce original music. I create a lot of things for my own releases, but I also do a lot of work creating music for theatre and film and video games, and sometimes I even dabble in the odd podcast theme. So that's me. And yeah, MCDM, I can't remember when it was, but I think it must have been fairly early when I started to get into tabletop role-playing games and D&D specifically, that I did what I think a lot of us do and kind of just like trolled YouTube for videos to learn about it, because the group that I was in, it was getting in over my head. And probably it happened around the time when I started to DM, and I was just like looking for DM tips, and Matt was just one of many people that showed up, and then I just kind of started like binging running the game and like absorbing all of these tips. And then the more I used them, the more I was like, this is genius. This has completely transformed the way I do D&D. And when the pitch went out for Flea Mortals, I was like, this sounds awesome, because I had run, I had taken the concept of the action-oriented monsters. And just from like Matt's very first video on that concept, I'd taken that idea and run it in a game, and immediately had like one of the best sessions I had ever run. And I was okay, yeah. So when I saw that Flea Mortals was going to be a book full of that kind of stuff, I was like, okay, I'm fully convinced. And yeah, I've kind of just been whatever Matt and that team create. I know that there's so much thought and care into it, and I trust that it's going to be good. So yeah, that's me and MCDM and how I got into it.
Yeah, and kind of leading off of that, I first came across you when doing research for this podcast, and I regularly look up mentions of MCDM and their products on the World Wide Web. And I came across you in a YouTube search when you did the music for the Shifting Library. And what inspired you to make the music? And do you do this often for a lot of like dungeons and stuff you run?
Yeah, I don't do it all the time, but because I have such a like love for music, and I always love to like when I'm inspired, I will just create. So sometimes for my games, when I'm running something, whether it's, I mean, in the case of the Shifting Library, it was something from Where Evil Lives, but I've done it for homebrew things as well. If I'm inspired by the things that I've designed or that I'm going to run that kind of triggers the inspiration to write music, and then I just sort of do it. So with the shifting library, I was just sitting there planning the session that I was going to run with that adventure, and the place where I sit and plan is also the place where I make music. My bass was just right there, and I was like, oh, I'm feeling a little inspired. Picked it up, started playing something. I was like, yeah, this feels like it could work. And then just like, a couple hours later, it was fully written. Wow. And once I had this piece of music for that setting, it was like, okay, now I actually have to do something with this. In terms of like a question of do I do it a lot? Not really, but especially if I'm running a one shot, there's so little time in a one shot to do everything that you want to do and to like meet the like character demands of every character. To like get them to explore their backstory and everything. So something I like to do when I'm running one shots is to like create a little prelude for each individual character. And that way, when they come to the table, they have some preconception of what their character has been doing, how their backstory ties into this specific adventure.
Right.
And because I have the experience with like audio recording and I have a backlog of music, I create like a little audio prelude for each character that's usually like 5-6 minutes long. I'll write a few hundred words, I'll record it and lay my own music and sound effects underneath and send them out to each character or to each player. And once I had the music for the shifting library, I was like, okay, cool, I'm going to do this again, and now it's going to have custom music. And then when we come and play the game, that music that you heard in the prelude is going to show up as we're playing the game, and it's going to feel like this, curated thing. And I think,
cool.
Yeah, I like to go the extra mile to make things special for my players whenever I can. And I think they enjoy it. It makes the game feel like a more fleshed out, full experience.
Yeah. It feels almost like you're bringing almost like cinematic language into the game.
Yeah, very, very much so. I mean, I've studied films at university, and I've studied film scoring in university, and I don't do a lot of work composing for films, but I bring a lot of film scoring ideas to how I work with theater and to D&D, because I think how we engage with media and stories is always going to be aided with musical experience. And I don't know, I've always had this experience at the table where when I put on a playlist or something of generic fantasy combat music or whatever, the players will always like, it pulls them out of the experience. They'll be like, oh, is this from The Witcher? Or, oh, is this from is this from Lord of the Rings? I'm like, dude, is a goblin trying to, cut off your legs? Like, yes, it's from The Witcher. Can we focus here? So being able to use like my own original music for specific moments, it creates a clearer picture. Your music can support the emotion or the drama of what's happening at the table, but in a way that adds to rather than distracts from that drama. So I wish I had more time to just write music for every single session, but
yeah.
I save it for special occasions, like particularly special bosses or for bespoke one shot adventures like the shifting library.
Wow, that brings DMing to a different level and composing custom music for certain sessions.
Yeah, well, I can't remember which video, and this is a frequent thing for me, is that I remember that Matt said something in a video, but I can't remember where. But I think Matt said that like one of the wonderful things about tabletop and about D&D is that it brings in so many other hobbies. Like people who are interested in writing and world building can bring that. People who are interested in painting and crafting can bring that to, models and terrain. People who are interested in, theater and improvisation get to, really bring out those character chops and the voices and whatever at the table. and I do some of that, but the thing that's biggest for me is music, and being able to bring that to the table is, I mean, it's fun, and it's also special for myself and for the players.
I'm honestly a bit envious of your players. On the topic of TTRPGs, basically, it sounds like you're a 5e player or DM at least.
Yes, yeah. 5e with a healthy amount of homebrew. Yeah.
Is it homebrew as in rules or more the adventures and?
Yeah, it depends on the game. I've kind of done every version of it except for running an adventure by the book. Like, I've run games in completely homebrewed worlds, with homebrew classes thrown in, whether that's like mostly like other people's homebrew classes. The most I would get is like homebrew spells or magic items in terms of like character or player options. But I've done like completely homebrewed adventures. I've run games. I'm actually running a game right now that is like it's a homebrewed version of Tolkien's Middle Earth. So I'm running like a Middle Earth 5e game. The closest I got to running an adventure was I did Strixhaven, but I kind of ran Strixhaven as this hybrid homebrew / Harry Potter thing. It was kind of a sequel to a game that I had run set in Hogwarts. I was like, well, now that you've graduated from Hogwarts, you're going to go to Magical University, and that's going to be Strixhaven. And I took a lot of the adventure hooks and the setting and the characters from Strixhaven, but after about like the first couple of chapters, I kind of ditched the story because I wanted to do something different, but also my players kind of derailed things as players tend to do.
As players tend to do, indeed.
But all with 5e, not because I'm particularly attached to it, just because it's what me and all my players are familiar with.
Yeah.
But I think I'm pretty confident that once Draw Steel launches fully, I think I may become an exclusive Draw Steel game master or director.
Yeah, that was actually going to be my follow-up question, whether or not you have any interest in Draw Steel. And it sounds like it. Is there anything in particular that you've seen in Draw Steel that you're kind of inspired by or kind of looking forward to kind of using?
Yeah, I've not been super closely following the development. Like I'm a Patreon patron.
Who knows?
So I get all of the updates and I sometimes read them, but I'm not following closely. I haven't run any play tests or anything. And I think the reason for that is that I'm very much interested in the finished product.
Yeah.
And I'm not too concerned about how they get there. Like Matt constantly says, like, if you just want to play the game, don't follow along because you'll get attached to this rule and then we'll realize that it doesn't work and we'll get rid of it. And I'm kind of saving myself that sorrow. But also the game that I'm running now, I want to finish this story before I start another game, and the rule set of Draw Steel is not going to work for like the character level or the things that my characters are doing because it's 5e based. I think it's been talked about, like, what is the 5e conversion? Well, the answer is there isn't one, because that's not the goal, is to make a thing that you can directly cross over. It's another RPG that does similar things but in different ways. And I think once that finished product comes out, like the next game that I start will be using that rule set, and it will be designed to work with whatever that rule set is. But I backed the game. I'm going to get the books whenever they come out, and I'm very keen to get into it. But I think a half finished RPG is not particularly useful for me as a game master director right now. I'm definitely excited, And whenever I get an update, I'm like, oh, that is going to be so fun at the table. Like the power dice and all of these, and negotiation and all of these things, I can tell are going to be really fun. But they're not finished yet, and I'm one of those people who's waiting for it to be finished.
I think that's there is a certain kind of fun derived from being on like the bleeding edge and following development step by step, which I do, but I see in the Discord people being disappointed that stuff kind of disappears and but I like this thing, and they get reminded that this is the thing that you were warned about, that if you read the rules now, some stuff may change or disappear that you really liked. I see people have already started running campaigns using the rules as they are, with the intention of kind of swapping out the rules once more finished versions become available. That is also a choice.
As a very admirable choice, I think, like admirable choice. You get to, give the feedback to the developers. You get to, like, you're one of the first people ever to run a game in this system, and you get all of the benefits that come along with it. Like, the textbook example of what is the benefit of draw steal. Your attack rolls will not miss, and every time I at the table I have a player roll and they're like, that's a 9. I'm like, it misses. And they're like, great, I'm a fighter, so I'll try again. An 11, that also misses. Great, that's my turn. Every time that happens, I'm like, in about 2, maybe year and a half, this is not going to be a problem anymore. But I kind of have to, hold myself back and be like, okay, we got to put up with these shortcomings of 5e for now, and then it'll get better. Not that 5e is a bad system, just that I think a lot of us are feeling the pains of its limitations. And I'm ready for something fresh, but I want it to be finished, or at least ready to be used as a full campaign RPG system.
I had this interesting experience because the group my regular D&D group, we tried, I don't know if you've heard of this, but it's called Nimble. It's a system where they modify some of the rules for D&D, mostly combat rules, where they remove the to-hit roll, where you basically just roll the damage dice, and you select one of the dice to be like the primary dice. And if you roll a 1 on that one, you miss. But if you roll any other number than 1, you just hit automatically. And we tried it for 6 months. It was kind of okay. I think I liked it better than my players. But then we got a new player who's going to join us, and instead of kind of explaining it to him, okay, here's how Nimble works and all the custom rules that we have with this D&D 5e game, we just said, you know what, we're just going to switch back to the regular rules. That's easier for the new player, and the players weren't really enjoying the Nimble rules that much anyway. Then we play our first session with the back to regular 5e rules. Our barbarian goes in and spends 3 turns in a row never hitting. And she just goes, I missed the old system. This sucks. And then I just thought, oh man, we're so gonna switch to draw steal. Nimble feels kind of like the draw steal light version for 5e in some ways. So I was trying to see if that could work for my 5e game, because I thought that would be more fun for my players. But I don't know if I did a good enough job selling the concept of Nimble in 5e. But I think draw steal kind of speaks for itself, however. So I'm hoping they'll be more open for it.
That's what I found with twisting the rules for 5e, is that even if these are the benefits, it takes convincing to get your players on board. I can't remember if it's a draw steal thing or even if it's an MCDM thing, but the rule of when you roll initiative, you take turns back and forth between the DM and the players, but the players choose who goes when.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's your turn, as in you, all the players' turn, who is going to act now, and then you can choose strategically, I'm going to act first so that I can buff you and then you attack. But then next turn, you might want to swap. Like that kind of like choice and agency of where you go in initiative.
Yeah.
I've done that with my players, and at first they were like, this is confusing, it hurts my brain, can we just not do this? And I was like, stick with it for a few more sessions and just see what you think. And they started to catch on of like, oh yeah, this is, I can see the benefits. Like I can see that we wouldn't have been able to execute the plan that we just did with the regular rules for initiative. But then if we don't play for a few weeks and we come back, they kind of like forget how it works and then have to relearn. And it's starting to be like, I think we might have to drop it, because even though standard 5e initiative isn't perfect, they know it and they're comfortable with it. That I think that's a really important thing for an RPG, is that everyone at the table knows how it works, and even if it's imperfect, the smoothness of that routine has a real benefit. And I think like tweaking a system to improve things like that is much harder than just saying, here's this new system that we're all going to learn, and then it's going to work, because it's been designed to work all in combination with everything else. The changed initiative rule doesn't work with certain character or magic item abilities. And where those edge cases come up, it starts to be like, oh, we got to figure out now how that's going to work with this new system. But if everything's been built to work together, like Draw Steel will be, then that's an easier sell for the players, and it's easier to integrate. So I think that's part of why I'm kind of like reticent to change the rules of 5e too much, because it ruins that flow state that you can get into with players who are experienced with the rules. I mean, that's why I'm still with 5e, is because we all know it, we all know how it works, and we can run with the limitations.
Yeah. That was kind of what we kind of bumped up against when using Nimble too, that there is some really fun ideas in here. Again, I think they would work better if we played in person, but also there are a lot of, okay, here's this ability that explicitly references how rounds work, or how it expects a certain way for initiative to work, and now we have to figure out, okay, what does that mean in this system? How does action surge work when you have a point system instead of explicit actions?
Yeah.
So, and that requires a certain level of buy-in from the players, that they're willing to kind of be part of that, working that solution. For me, I didn't really have that for my players. So some of them engaged with it more than others, but it wasn't like they weren't completely sold on it. So yeah, I'm not going to blame my players. The system. The system, it wasn't perfect either.
Yeah, it's never the player's fault. If they don't feel good about it, then that's not their fault. That's just how they want to play. That's how they want the rules to work. And that's your job as the game master to facilitate the best version of that. And sometimes that may be convincing them to change things, but usually it's gonna be making the best situation out of something that isn't maybe perfect.
If nothing else, I should be grateful that they indulged me in my
exactly.
in my wish.
Exactly.
But what I've ended up doing in my with initiative after is doing kind of a hybrid where we all roll for initiative as we regularly do, and then I go in and sort all the actors in the combat to alternate between the two sides, me and the players. All the players are in the initiative order that they rolled, and all the monsters are in the initiative order that they rolled, but I interleave them so that we get a bit more back and forth, so prevent the case where we just end up with now all the players go and half my monsters are suddenly gone.
Yeah, this is my dirty little DM secret, and if my players are listening to this podcast, then I mean they'll probably be like, yeah, that makes sense. But you may want to close your ears. But I do that. I always do that. I always alternate back and forth as best I can, even if that's not how initiative worked. Like if the highest villain rolls a 10 and all of my players roll above a 15, well, you're going to go in the order that you went, and the villains are going to go in the order they rolled, but we're going to alternate because that's just so much. It's more, the pacing is better at the table. It's more fun. It helps people stay focused. It helps me stay focused. Like if you three have all gone, okay, now what are all of my guys going to do? Okay, this is going to go, and then everyone's like, oh, okay, Patty's just moving all the minis around on the table. We'll just take a break. And then I can be like, and now it's your turn. It's like, what's happened? We can completely avoid that by doing swapping. And even though it's not technically by the rules and maybe it's not technically fair, I think it's more fun. And I'm happy to cheat the initiative system to make something that, again, is smoother to run and is more fun for the players. So that's my dirty DM secret, is I always do that. Doesn't matter how the dice fall, you're always going to alternate. It's just what order are you going to alternate in?
Yeah, definitely. I suggested this system to my players, being open about it. And I suggested the system for the players, and they were like, okay, sure, that sounds okay, whatever, fine. And then I used it. I think it has been quite a success, at least for me. And then I mentioned it, or I mentioned it in passing, maybe a month later. All the players just went, oh, really? You do that? And I'm like, wait, we discussed this a month ago. But it just kind of showed me that this system works so well that they didn't even register that it was happening.
They suspended their disbelief so well that it just hung freely with no interference. It was just they fully were immersed in the experience.
It just surprised me because I see it so clearly in the initiative tracker, but they apparently did not even register that that it was happening. Moving on to a subject that's more close to home, I guess. I contacted you. It was probably is it a couple of months ago at this point, almost?
Something like that, yeah.
Asking whether or not you would be available for commissioning for a theme, to make some theme music for Goblin Points. You responded positively, and I gave you the very vague kind of vibe I was going for, which was a cross of fantasy and metal, which I tried to show some understanding that I know this is a very bad description of what I want, because I don't even know what I want. I just have I think those are the two kind of themes that I want to go together without really having like a specific vision. And I was wondering how frustrating that description was, and how you worked your way towards where you ended up.
Yeah. Firstly, thanks again for asking me. It's a great gig. It was a really fun thing to compose.
Great.
And I'd say you maybe are being a little bit too hard on yourself with your prompt, because I've gotten a lot weirder and a lot more indecipherable prompts from directors or whoever else has hired me to do music. Fantasy but metal was surprisingly, like, maybe it's just the kind of stuff that I write, but surprisingly crystallized in my mind right away what that was going to sound like. I think partly because I've done literally that exact thing before. A few years ago, I worked on a production of Shakespeare's Macbeth, and I wrote this big, and it was mostly like kind of classical fantasy kind of music as the soundtrack. I was very inspired by Howard Shore's Lord of the Rings score on that project. But one of the pieces that I wrote for that play was this big grand opening theme. It's like this 6-minute odyssey that goes through all of the different character motifs. I didn't finish it in time for the play, but then when I went back to finish music for the album, I like polished it up and got to the end. I was like, this piece needs this big climax. So I like cracked out the guitar and ripped on the distortion, like created this like metal breakdown over the like, fantasy melody that I had written. So when you said, fantasy metal, I was like, okay, cool. I know what I need to do. It's like going to be this fantasy track, and then we double track the guitars at the ending to get that distortion feeling. It was kind of a very natural, comfortable fit for me, but I think you got very lucky. You picked probably the exact right person because it's my wheelhouse to do that sort of thing. In terms of like how I actually wrote the full thing, one of the things that I like to do when I'm composing is, even though I'm good with my theory and I'm good with my instruments, I can usually come up with an idea pretty well through those means. I sometimes find it really hard to get the ideas that are in my head out onto music or onto an instrument. So I will set up a microphone and I will just hit record and sing through what I want. And yeah, so I basically, sat with the microphone and I went like, bling. And sang the melody out in full, and then whenever there's a big held note, I'd be like, "What's the drum feel?" or whatever it is. Like I sang that, and if I pull up the project file for the opening, at the very top there's this audio track of which is now muted, so you can't hear it in the original. But if you isolate that track, it's just me singing the whole thing, and it's basically exactly how I sang it, just with instrumentation. Because I had this idea in my head of what I wanted it to sound like, but there's no way I'm going to get it on the instrument before it's gone from my head. So I had to sing it out and then go through and piece it together. I started with the acoustic guitar at the start, that like finger picked figure, and that's double, I think maybe even triple tracked. So like one in the left ear, one in the right ear, one in the middle. And then, yeah, the woodwinds come in with the melody, and the second acoustic is strumming, because like I kind of wanted it to have these three sections where it builds up, one with just the solo acoustic guitar, then the melody, the fantasy feeling comes in, and then the final section is like where we bring in the metal breakdown. And the identity is consistent all the way through, that like triplet pulse with the flowing melody. But it's just like what layers are being brought in. And so, yeah, that middle section, we bring in the melody, that fantasy feeling, that kind of tavern feel. And then the final section is where it just gets cranked up, and it's the same feeling, but now the rhythm is being supported by this like heavy metal drum feel and the like, double tracked distorted guitars. And then just like, rip-roaring hit towards the end. And I basically got that arrangement down. I was like, cool, sent it over to you, and while I was playing around, I was like, oh, what if I sang the last little line? And I had listened to some of your episodes, and you always open with the "Willkommen to I'm John Denor and welcome to Goblin Points" or whatever it is that you say. And I was like, that "Willkommen" is very distinctive. And I could hear it with the guitar melody, that like, "Welcome to Goblin Points." I was like, what if I sing this? I tracked it. I was like, it's gonna be hard to track a choir and record it and get it to work. So I'll check if John is actually interested in having a choir before I go to the effort to do it. And you're like, yeah, that sounds sick. Let's do it. So I was like, hell yeah, I'll crack out like, I think it's probably like 20-25 vocal tracks, and all like panned in different things. And that's me like singing like a wizard, "Welcome to Goblin Points," doing my best Gandalf, but then also doing like my best like choir boy, "Welcome to Goblin." Like I'm doing all these different. It's very, very DM of me, I guess, to put on all these different characters to sing the choir, and then panning them in all different stereo spaces to get that big broad sound. So that's, probably a bit disorganized, but a way of explaining how I did it. But that was kind of it in a nutshell. A lot of fun.
I remember you sent the first iteration, I think, and towards the end there was this metal guitar that came in with bring it to like to a climax, and I remember saying that crank the metal up a bit. Don't be afraid to mix in a more metal. And then when you came back, it had the I don't know what it's called, is it a guitar lick or the
yeah. So I had I recorded.
Oh, here's the guitar.
I recorded this shred melody And all the way through, there's the acoustic guitar doing that, but that layer kind of gets buried under all the distorted guitars in the metal section. And when you said make it more metal, I was like, what's more metal than shred tapping? So I was like, okay, what if I crank up the distortion and really and instead of just like finger plucking on the acoustic, I was like, what if I'm shredding it? And that was like, that's what it needed to get to that extra level. I think I originally recorded 2 metal guitars, like one in the left ear, one in the right, classic like guitar production trick to get that big like wall of sound and like slightly different tone in each ear. So it sounds quite different. And then for the final track, I think I added a 3rd layer dead in the middle to just like bring it all together. So yeah, those two things, the extra 3rd layer in the middle and then the tapping lick, kind of like, crank the metal up to 11, to use the classic cliche.
I have to mention, now that you've shown me the guitar on the video, the end of the neck, which I feel like have a distinctive kind of look on most guitars. You've got like a chopped off one.
Yeah. I guess if you're listening, you can't see this, but if you go onto my Instagram, you can see photos of me holding this lovely Strandberg Bowden. This is like when I played like this cheap. I don't know if you in Norway do you have Aldi?
No, I know of it, but we don't have it in Norway. No,
it's like a budget supermarket, but at least in Australia, Aldi's have this aisle in the middle, which is just filled with like random things. They will change it every week. Some weeks they'll be like, it'll be a barbecue. Some weeks it'll be swimwear. Some weeks it'll be like ski wear. Some weeks it'll be gardening tools. And some weeks it'll be musical instruments. And so I had this Aldi guitar, which is like basically the cheapest guitar you could possibly get. And I played that for years. And then eventually I was like, I need a nice guitar. So I bought like this guitar, which is a Strandberg, and they make them in this very weird shape. And it's designed so that you can sit it on your leg, or you can sit it upright on your leg like this, or you can sit it on your other leg. It's kind of very ergonomic. And the neck is this trapezoid shape. So it's not like a standard curved neck. It has this shape which allows your fingers to track in a very specific position as you play. It's very comfortable in the hand. And then, there's no headstock on the top. So the tuning pegs are down here by the bridge. And then there's nothing on the top, which reduces the weight. And it means that, like, this is super light. It feels like a toy almost in terms of how much it weighs. Doesn't feel like a toy though. It feels like a tool. This is the real deal. But then, that headless design, it just means that, like, on stage, it's a little bit smaller. It's lighter. So I really like that design. I think it looks kind of cool, but it's just the reduced weight. And one of my basses has that as well, the headless design. A couple of my other basses, the one I used for the shifting library, does not. That actually does have a headstock. But,
is that a 5-string bass?
This is my This is both of my basses are 5 strings. Sorry, 2 of my 3 basses are 5 strings. The headless one is a low B, so that goes all the way down to like these super low notes. But then this one, the one that I used in the shifting library, is also a 5-string, but it has a higher string, and you can hear it in that recording. I use the higher strings to get these higher melody lines and chords. I come from a trumpet playing background, so I'm very much interested in melody as much as I am bass lines. So having a bass where I can go up high on the neck is really quite satisfying. So that's kind of why I have 2 5 strings, is one to do the low stuff and then one to do the high stuff. The headless guitar design is like, it's so comfortable. That's part of why I was really excited to do the music for this, is like, I can crack out the guitar and just have fun riffing, because I don't always get to do that. So it was fun.
Yeah, I'm really happy with the result. I don't necessarily see myself as a very creative person, so I'm kind of happy that I was able to kind of just load the the job of being creative over on you. I'm just going to give you some vague instructions, and then we'll let the creative person figure out the details to make it fun and interesting.
Well, I certainly had a lot of fun with it, but I wouldn't discredit your creativity too much. You are a game master after all this. It's inherently a creative act.
Sure, but you know, I've got adventures. So they bring like the bulk of the work to me, and then I just do like small tweaks on top. So I don't know. I feel like I've kind of started to accept my limitations, and rather focus on where I believe my strengths are. Time will show.
That's fair enough. I think you need to have a passion for it. There's no virtue in doing it for its own sake. Again, I can't remember what Matt Colville video this is from, but I remember Matt saying that the DM is a player too, and that like the things that you find fun are the things that you should bring to the game. So if you find it fun to build a homebrew world and to come up with an adventure and story hooks and things like that, like I do, then that's what you should do. And your players should embrace that, because that's your way of having fun. But if you just have fun, you know, running adventures and being the facilitator of that, and that's how you have fun, then that's what you should do, because that's how you play as a DM.
Yeah, I actually I played I'm a temporary game master for a group on Tuesdays at the moment. We'd played like an introductory adventure, and now I'm kind of leading them towards the another published adventure that kind of builds on that introductory adventure. They were going in a different direction, which isn't necessarily bad. There was a hint in the introductory adventure that this is somewhere you could go, and here's like a story hook to go there. I didn't realize how important it was to one of the players to kind of do it was this dagger that was supposed to be returned to the son of a person who had been killed, and they felt like a real some responsibility there to go and get this dagger back to the son, which I hadn't picked up on well enough to realize that they would actually push for this to be the next thing they do. And I had this whole other thing prepared, of course, and they were supposed to be jailed at the end of the introductory adventure. Any of like the clues that would make the NPC suspicious, they didn't pick up any of those clues. They didn't loot the body they were supposed to. They ended up not getting the right wounds to be suspected. They didn't. There were so many circumstances that just made their way through all of them by sheer luck. So this NPC wasn't suspicious at all and just let them go. Now the NPC returns, and through a bit of luck and some last second thinking on my part, made them suspicious of the characters again through a way that actually felt real. And it even ended up making the character more sinister in the way they kind of behave around the characters, which also plays into how they are the personality they are revealed to have later in the adventure that we're going into. So I was kind of just stumbling my way through or into happy solutions the whole way through, which ended up giving me the best session I've DM'd. And also it also included quite literally 1 hour of the players discussing whether or not they should do the job for the NPC, because one of the players really disliked them and wanted to return the dagger, and but the threat that the ultimatum that he had given them basically said, you either do this thing for me, or I'll throw you to the not to the literal wolves, but like the non-existent legal system in this town. You'll just be put in jail and then hung at some point later, or you do this thing for me. And one of the players says, I didn't kill the person that we're accused of killing. That was you. And it literally points out the character who dealt the killing blow. I did not kill them. So we're 3 innocent people and 1 murderer. So I'm not going to do this job for this person I don't like, I don't trust, and I have this other thing that I really want to do. This was all in character. The players
Mm.
themselves are fine, but it was just a really interesting where two of the players were kind of like, let's try to come to an agreement here, and one player was, no, this guy is responsible. We're innocent. Don't bring us down.
That's exactly the kind of thing that my players would do. It would just be like, I'm not having any of this. I'm doing my own thing. And I think that's really it's a really good thing because it shows your players are confident to make their own decisions. That to me is like when they choose something that I didn't expect or that I didn't plan for, or they do the opposite of the thing that I thought they would do. That to me is like, yes, I'm rooting for you. You have independence to the point where now, and I say this to my players, they always ask me, did you think we were going to do that? Or what did you think we were going to do? Or what do you think we're going to do next? And it's to the point where I am completely honest when I say I had no expectations. And I think I've trained myself now with my players to just, I don't expect you to do anything. I have no expectations because I know that as soon as I start to expect something, you're not going to do it anyway. So there's no point. And that's the kind of game that I, at least at the moment that I'm running now, is this very player-led game. I'm not like, I don't have an adventure planned that this is the thing that you're going to do. You're going to tell me what you want to do, and then I'll prep for it. Or you're going to do the things that you're going to do. You're going to kill the people that you want, or you're going to negotiate with the people that you want. Whatever happens, happens. And I can't tell you how many times I've expected a fight to go down, and then they talk their way out of it. And
right.
That's just how it is. And they always say, did you expect us to kill this person? And I'm like, maybe a little bit, but I also, I just genuinely don't expect anything anymore. Yeah. It's just a world with people in it. And if you go and kill them, then that's what you do. If you don't kill them, then that's what you do. I don't have any expectations.
Yeah. At the end, I usually ask for a recommendation or something you want to recommend. So, do you have anything that you think people should check out?
Yeah, I'm gonna be greedy. I've got 3 things.
All right.
But one of them is at the very least. One of them is very much for the people.
Okay.
The first is this. I'm a mini painter, so I love to paint and craft minis and use them on the table. And I'm sure a lot of people have had a very similar experience to me, which is that the D&D minis are not great. And so my first recommendation is to check out minis from other producers for other games. And especially if you're a mini painter and you like to really get creative with your paint jobs and everything. Games Workshop that make Warhammer and Age of Sigmar and all of that. And the Middle-earth strategy battle game as well. Their minis are just amazing. They're so fun to put together and paint. And especially the fantasy ones work so well on the table to be like these evocative creatures. So a lot of the minis that I put on the table nowadays are just Warhammer minis because they're great. Especially if you like homebrewing monsters, you will get so much inspiration from picking up a cool Warhammer mini and thinking, what rules am I going to use for this absolute beast? So I love to do that, and that's my first recommendation. My second is a film, and it's my favorite movie. Came out a couple of years ago. It's called The Menu. I don't know if you've heard of it or you've seen it.
Yes, I think I've seen clips from it.
It's an absolutely amazing movie with Ralph Fiennes and Anya Taylor-Joy. It's kind of like it's not really a horror. It's more of a thriller, but with a tasteful amount of comedy in it. I don't know. There's something about it that just like I love The Menu. It's such a satisfying movie for me. And my final recommendation is my self plug, which is to go and listen to my music on Spotify and Apple Music and Bandcamp and all of that. As we're recording this, I just released an album a few days ago called Myco Madness, which is the soundtrack to a video game that I worked on in January. Kind of like sci-fi metal kind of thing. If you follow me on Spotify and Bandcamp and such, I'm working on an album that hopefully will come out early 2025. This is my first announcement of this. So this is you get the scoop on this.
Exclusive.
Yeah. It's gonna be a bunch of music that I've written as like film scoring and trailer scoring projects. It's going to include the Shifting Library, the music that I wrote for that. It's going to include another piece of music that I wrote for a D&D boss battle that I never got to run because the players avoided that fight. And it will also include the Goblin Points theme.
Nice.
Yeah. So follow me on music platforms and wherever, and when that comes out, you will see it, and then you'll hear it.
Fantastic. Thank you so very much for coming on, Patrick. It was great having you make the theme music for Goblin Points, but also great having this talk with you.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. Thanks for having me.
Again, thank you to Patrick for coming on. Links to where you can find Patrick and his music on Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, and elsewhere is in the show notes. Do go check him out. If you want to be on Goblin Points or know of someone else who should be, leave a comment on YouTube or Spotify, or send me an email on tips@goblinpoints.com. Links to the MCDM Discord server, the subreddits for MCDM and Draw Steel, the YouTube channels of Matt and MCDM, the complete link section, and this script is in the show notes. It's also on goblinpoints.com. Next episode is on the 5th. It's the roundup episode of November. See you next time. Snackis.